Good evening, everybody, and happy Friday. Welcome to the Just Jump In live stream. Let me know you're out there and let me know you can hear me. And I see Randy popped in. Hey, Randy. I got the window open because I had some fumes and stuff, and it's kind of warm over here. But then again, I have a light on me and inside, but not a lot of cool air flowing yet. But I hope it's a little cool there in Hutchinson. So welcome. Thank you for checking in. Got a few people jumping in here, and nice to see you, and just say hey and let me know you're out there. Hey, Mom. Welcome in. You have any preseason hockey games this weekend? Our Gopher hockey starts next week. The women started the last couple days. Yesterday, and they're playing today. Hey, Mike, welcome. Nice to have you stopping in, and I know you're always on the run, always doing stuff, so glad to have you in here. So, okay, I don't know what that means, but I'll leave that alone, Mom, and I'm sure tomorrow night you can explain. So, all right. Hey, Brad. I saw you put out a video. I didn't check it out yet. But I'll check that out tonight. So thanks for keeping us up to date on your work. I checked in on your brother's stream not too long ago, and nice to see him as well. So, all right. So what have I been working on? Again, it was a light work week for model railroading. I kind of had over the weekend, I kind of had some steam, and it slowed a little because we're busy at work. So the first thing I did is I came back. I went to start to measure and drill holes for the side doors on here. And what did I do with it? I put it in here. So I cut out a little guide. It's, believe it or not, well, it's easy to believe, but it is not a straight guide either. But when I use this and I kind of put my lines in, the recommended way to do this is to drill holes and then cut, and drill holes in the corners of your cut. And so that's what I started to do, but I had one hole already slip, and I don't remember if I like this hole started. There was something I didn't like about that one, so I went ahead and put more of the Tamiya putty on, and I'll sand down again. I'll sand flat again and start over. But as I was mentioning, this putty really, really shrinks. And so you can see the two drill holes. So you can see one down here, and you can see how it slipped on me here, went too far above. And I started one over here as well. But I decided I needed to backtrack. And so I'll put another coating of the putty tonight, let it dry 24 hours, and tomorrow night I'll start working on sanding it, I believe. But you can see how this was completely covered over and raised up, but it shrunk down. So I don't know if you can see real well. Well, you might right here. Here's the original putty, and it's sanded down. And then here's that next layer of putty I put on. So I got to put another layer. So that's as far as I got with that. And then I moved on to other things because, again, you have to let the putty dry. I just used, didn't have the right size block, so I just had some foam that I cut down a little bit and use this so that when I'm putting pressure on here, I'm not bending this too much. They recommend using a piece of wood, which would make it even more sturdy, but then I'd have to go find a piece of wood, cut it to the right size, and I don't have the tools for that. So this works just fine. So I was working on that. I haven't done anything further with the private car too much, I should say. I had to re-add the bolster on this. It came off. Then I got the wiring back through and I was testing it again. And it really is the top in here is just too high. So I'm going to have to cut it down. Or sand it down or whatever, but that's going to make a mess, and I don't look forward to that because that plastic, when you cut it with a Dremel tool, it really smells. But I'm going to end up having to do that. I have at least this decal. I got to put a number over here, and then the decals on that side. Then dull coat it. After all those steps, then solder the wires onto here, and that'll give you the pickup for lighting off of the track. So just kind of mess with it a little bit. Two other things that I've done. I had my printer, my 3D printer, hard at work for all of these pieces here. This is basically a modular building. If you think about like the DPM type kits, that's kind of the size of these things. And so this is a whole mill, and it's most of the parts. You can see here that there are some pieces that didn't print well that can be reprinted. And I don't know if this is quite all the parts, but I was fitting them together and looking at them. It looks like it'll come out pretty nice. For me, there are some limitations right now with 3D printing that people haven't completely got right. Now, this is a really nice looking thing, but sometimes it feels like the windowsills are exaggerated, and this is better than other ones I've seen. So we'll see how those come out. And then this neat little thing is the window setup. So it's really the black and then the white on the background, and we certainly can paint or change those. What I was thinking of doing was printing the bottom part of this instead of in white, which was the recommendation. What is just to use some clear plastic, and I have some, but the version I have is called PETG or PETG. It doesn't mesh with PLA, which is the other common one. So I don't have black in the PETG. I have the clear. So if I were to print this, the top part wouldn't stick to this, and this wouldn't print out right. So if I get some either clear PLA or black PETG, I'll go back in and reprint these because there are a ton of them, and they fit nicely and everything, and they'll look good in there. I think if they're clear, and it's thin enough, it might actually be clear all the way through, but because it's printed in lines, it may not be. It might be opaque, but I think it'll work. The other thing is the red I have is just a red. It's not a bright red. It's not a flat red. So light's going to reflect off of it. So what I went back through is I made a little a little wash and to dull it down. So you might be able to see the difference here slightly. And I did some darker than others. I did some layers that were darker. You can see, if I pull it away from the camera, you can see I did it much darker up the top and much lighter at the bottom of the smokestack. And I did that on all of here. Some really dark pieces that I did them really heavy because these 3 pieces here are going to be on a roof. So I expect them to be dirtier like the smokestack. So that's what I did to dull it down. And as I was fitting it together, it looks like it will go together nicely the way they slot together. And so it's modular. You could do small buildings. You know, I could put together a building here with, see if we get a couple of these work nicely together. And then printed roofs and floors are slotted, and these are printed with slots in them, so you can slot them together. So it goes together really easily. Welcome in, Central Otago Railway. Nice to have you in here. Appreciate you stopping by. But you can see this will slot together nicely. I might, if I was going to do this and put this like on the front of a layout, I would probably put a styrene strip here and a styrene strip here to basically cover the seams, because buildings aren't made quite like that. But essentially these go together when the printing comes out nicely. They go together really simply, and you may have to put in the roof before you close it all up, and you will have yourself a little modular building. But it would come out something like this, and then you could design it however you want, add details that you want to add. But there's all kinds of different parts of this to make a larger building anyway. So I thought that was a neat idea, and I'm always trying new things. I'm always jumping in, and so there you go. So I printed that, and I think it was probably a total of 17 to 19 hours to get all these parts printed. And then, you know, depending on what you want to do on your own, you could figure out which ones you really want to print. Do you want more uniformity? You want more different parts? Then you can, it's very repeatable, and you'll have some nice buildings on your layout. So I'm always trying stuff. Again, I always go for the free file. So somebody designed that and then put that out for free. And so that's really impressive. I appreciate the work people put into their stuff, because I put a lot of work into the stuff I design. And I haven't been back on to design anything since I did the test print for my mom's flat display. I have to print out the other side, make sure it all fits right. So Mom, the other thing is I'm printing a floor with that you can then cover over with whatever flooring you want to cover over. But to make sure that the furniture is at the same height as if it was a building, and when you're walking into the building and you have a floor in there and everything. It'll be a little bit a step up or whatever, but it'll look much better that way. So you'll have a surface area to put all that furniture that you're displaying with the front facade. And that'll work that way. I still have work to do on that one. And those take a long time to print, and I have to print them in parts because of their size. So the other thing that I've started to do was I started writing articles, and I want to get back to videos. So I have something that I'm going to do that's going to be both video and article, and I got started. I had some leftover 1-inch insulation foam. I've had this foam for years, from when I started the last layout, and so I had leftover. So I cut it all up, and I'm making little mountains, I guess you would say. So here's one of them. And so I just used some of this Woodland Scenics foam tack glue here, and it's just a really thick white glue. It dries clear. You might be able to see a little shine in there. I tried to cut that down. This is messy to work with when you're cutting this down. I went to the dollar store and bought a set of steak knives. That's what I've always used. So when I've done my layouts in the past, I've always used a steak knife. You can use a hot wire cutter and it'll come out smoother than this. But again, more fumes, you can burn yourself, those sorts of things. And it's another investment. And I found that just using a serrated knife works just fine. Here's another one that I did. And then finally with some variety, I don't know, it looks like a hoof or something, but I did that. So what am I doing with all that? I am going to do basically a clinic on using Sculpt-A-Mold. And it's my favorite scenery product. And so this is Sculpt-A-Mold. And all Sculpt-A-Mold is crushed paper. It's crushed into a powder. And all you do is add water, creates a paste that dries solid, and it's lighter than plaster, and you have to use plaster cloth to apply the plaster. So you apply it right on to the surface and you form it, and you can do it as thick as you want, and you can attach things to it. So if you're going to put in like a preformed rock on here, you can put the Sculpt-A-Mold down, and while it's wet, you put in the rock face that you want to put in, and it'll dry in there, and then you can paint over it. So I'm going to do an article for our regional newsletter and put it into video as well. Yeah, and that's correct. There are some that have them, and there are also ornate ones too. I have the station that I'm going to build has kind of like, it's all faux brick, but the design is, it has over the top of the corners, it almost looks like interlocking as well, and so definitely you can certainly take it any way you like. And if you do have a prototype that you're looking at, or an inspirational one that you're looking at, and those work for you, that's fine. I'm just always used to having buildings that didn't have that interlocking, but as part of the design. But yes, you can go either way, and that would just be an enhancement on the image. So I agree with you. So yeah. I don't know if anybody else has used this. Some people have made their own crushed paper by taking newspaper and crushing it and whatever, and simply you're grinding it down to a powder form, and then you are just adding water to activate it, and you get about a 15 to 20 minute working time. I get really messy with it. I like to use my hands. You can use a sculpting tool, like this will work just fine as a sculpting tool, but I find more control, and I find I get what makes it look aesthetically better by using just a couple fingers, wetting my fingers, going in and forming it, and so you get some really nice forms. I wish I did have the pictures from my N-scale layout. I made a tunnel, and I made kind of just a cliff face or rock face where I stole some rock from a parking lot. It was oversized for, and it was N-scale, so it was oversized for not only HO but N-scale. But I blended it in, and I filled that in, and I put some rocks in there. The other thing I'm going to show is how to do kind of the poor man's rock mold. In the US, so I've had this bag forever, and I don't know if it comes out. I've had this bag for years. This was only the second bag I ever used. You can use these up. These are 3-pound bags. You can get them in like 25-pound. That's the only other way I've seen them. Either these 3-pound bags or a box that's 25 pounds, and I wasn't going to buy that. 15 years. This is only the second bag. I mean, if you have a layout that you're doing, you're going to use it up. But at the time, it was $10.25 at the local hobby shop. It's $13.95 now. There, I've seen it as much as $16.99. You go online to like Amazon, it's going to be more expensive if you can find it on there. I really don't find a lot of affordable model railroad stuff on Amazon, but yeah, I've had this forever and doesn't really go bad or anything. It's just crushed up paper. Yeah, so Brad, it's something to try. And the other thing is you can use, if you have like a plywood benchwork, or if you use foam, it's generally flat when you're doing it. If you want to make some unevenness, but you don't want to build a mountain, you can use this and, put a couple layers on in an area to raise it up. That's definitely something you can do if you have, like you have a pretty flat industrial layout, Brad. You can still make areas of it that you have, you can make a mound of something. If you want to make a mound of junk and you don't have a lot of junk, you could essentially make a small mound of this, paint it to cover up the look, and then add the junk on top and glue the junk on top of that surface. You can make a pile of junk in an industrial yard really easy that way, without a lot of actual pieces. So definitely things you can do with this on a very flat layout. And so you can make your layout hilly if you want. If you don't want it, mountainous, but you want some definition, you can take 1 inch of this and form just the inch of this, and you can have a small mound and put this over top. And then you have something. I'm sure even if you want to use up some of this, you probably can use just this as a mound, and it'll probably work. So the All Blacks game, is that are we talking New Zealand rugby? So anyway, so that's what I've been working on this week. I almost tried to run off to the hobby shop. I was going to pick up some hydrocal. That's the only other thing I was going to pick up is the hydrocal to make the rock molds. And the poor man's rock mold is just taking tin foil and scrunching it up and balling it up and then reopening it. Yep, you definitely could do that. You definitely could use an old blender. I was doing that. I was trying to make my own ground foam at one point early on, and when I was in the hobby, I was trying to be cheap with that, and that was you blending up stuff like that. And so you definitely can. You can make your own. I like how this comes out, and they have other. They have on the back of this. They talk about you can use this for casting, for use in rubber, latex, plastic, and size plaster molds. So I've never used it for casting, so I would be interested in seeing how that worked. I've only used it for modeling, which is, which I really enjoy. So I'm going to put it together a educational presentation and write it up and author that. So I got started with that. I started the article. I got started with these, and then realized I didn't have any hydrocal. So I'm going to pick up some of that this weekend, and then I'll get started with the instruction on how to do it. And it does take a long time to fully dry. I always recommend letting it sit for 24 hours, and that seems to be a sweet spot for me when I'm working with it. It starts to dry in 15 to 20 minutes, but it stays wet. And if you have something that's thicker, so let's say I pour it on and I have some contour going that way, it's going to be thick in here. That's going to take a really long time to dry. So the top might feel like it's drying, but underneath it won't be as dry. So it does take a while. So you want to do all that you're going to do. So I'll probably complete one of these to show as a finished product at the beginning. And then I'll show one or two in progress doing different things. Maybe on one, just doing the sculpture mode, one on the other, adding rocks into it or something like that. But hey, Derail Daryl, welcome in. Long time no see. Welcome from Southern California. Is it still warm and sunny and great in Southern California? So that's what I've been working on. So I know, like I said, Brad has put out a video I haven't seen yet. I'm wondering what everybody else is working on, and what they're going to be working on this weekend. So Daryl, the thing I liked, and I don't have a lot of experience with the plaster. Both can be just as messy. People say, well, one's messy, the other one's not so messy. I've seen both. They're both messy. I don't mind getting messy with stuff. But plaster always seems to be heavier, and I could be wrong about that, but it just seems to me to be heavier. And I plan, because of my living situation, I really can only do modules. Well, that's not true. I don't. It's not just only doing modules, but the smartest thing to do is modules, so I can move them if I need to, and so I can build them out and work on different areas of my railroad. So I still want it light enough to move around. So, Daryl, have you been working on anything? I know it's been a while. I know last time around you had some. There's a lot of health stuff in your family going on, and a lot of heavy stuff going on. But wondering if you've been able to get back to the model railroading or doing anything Zen to um, help you get through that stuff. We're gonna. The reason I have the window open again is I'm gonna get that smelly stuff out to work on while we're having a chat. But it is smelly. This is another thing that I prefer to work with my fingers over over tools. If I'm got a big area, I might do that. But I feel like I have more control over this. So again, what we want to do is get those raised up, let it shrink down, and then be able to sand that down. But right now, as is, nothing to sand down there. So, and this stuff also is really messy and grabs on to everything. So if you accidentally touch over here, you're going to have it there. You're going to want to sand it down a little. Oh, this smells. And how it looks now doesn't matter. Just want to make sure I fill in those areas. Because again, it has this major shrinkage. So we're going to do a little bit more on there. I'm going to try not to like I said, try not to overuse this because most of you are sanding off anyway. And that's true about anything you use this putty on. You're going to be sanding quite a bit because we're going to sand it smooth. And I don't know if anybody's ever used the wet sanding technique. That's what you want to use with this. So you're basically getting it down to flat and then polishing with the wet sanding technique. So that's all there is to it. Go through all. Takes just a minute to do that, and then we'll actually let even that little area. We'll let that dry all the way through tomorrow night. We'll work on it tomorrow night. Start sanding it down. 90% complete. So if it's 90% complete, it's technically complete, but we never finish them. So you always have that 10% to work on. At least that's how I see it. Me, I'm not even probably 1% done with my layout. Hey, Carolina Foothills, welcome in. Just kind of going through the things I've been working on, checking out what everybody else is working on. Yeah, Daryl, and it does. And I have cancer throughout my family, so it always makes me nervous. And I've started getting the checks that I need to get, and I'm always nervous about hearing stuff, hearing the results of that, and so all the power to you. I'm glad it was caught early, and that you're working through it. Ooh, this does smell. I'm going to move this closer to the window over here because you get high off of that stuff. But there, I meant to show you. I didn't show you this piece of this that was 3D printed. That's computer's making some weird noises. Where did it go? So they gave you they have 2 sign designs for the company on here, and of course, oh, here they are. So this is multicolor printed, and then again, I put this was stark white, so I put some that wash on, and then here's 3 colors, and this is what they designed for this ironworks, and that really came out nice. And again, I added some wash so it's not super stark on there. Yeah, so I don't know exactly how I'm going to design it. I don't know. I just want to put it together and see if it put together a nice building. But here's just an example again of them. Of just a mock-up of it, of how this works together. And so they work together nice, but you got to make sure the printing is good. So and this is this is designed well. This is what I would call user error. So if you can see how kind of messed up this all is, that's not going to go together, and it's really bent. That's an issue with bed adhesion, and that makes it sticking down. So you buy this really expensive piece of equipment, and the tried and true way to make sure you have bed adhesion is buying, for cents on the dollar, buying glue sticks and putting that down on the bed that it sits on when it's printing. I didn't get the glue sticks at first. I thought it was ridiculous, but I'm finding that it's not so ridiculous. Here's another one where there were some issues here with the printing. But again, all these prints are repeatable. And once I actually have a design, I can actually print the sides that I actually want for it. And make the building whatever I want. So, and I'm always looking for prints to try, and looking for different things besides the things that I design. I look to see what other people design, and this is as good as any DPM model. And if we break down the cost, a roll of filament costs $25, $20 in there, depending on the type of filament or whatever. So you think that's a lot, but when you realize how little goes of that filament goes into printing these, it becomes, again, cents to print. And if I build up a bunch of buildings and I build the city out of it, or something, or just even a main street out of the different things that you print, it would be a money saver in the long run. So I forget what cancer my dad had, if it was prostate or if it was something else. He got another cancer that eventually spread to his brain, and then it wasn't operable, and it was beyond what could work. I think the other one was resolved, but then he got another one. But I've had the test for prostate cancer. Doctor didn't call me back, so I hope that was good news, and everything. Oh, there she goes. So he had bladder cancer. So So yeah, he was 69 when he passed away. Um, we he was in hospice, so he just was, he just needed the care. He was in pain almost all the time after a while, so he wasn't comfortable anywhere. So he went into hospice. And I live in Minnesota, and I'm from New Jersey. That's where he was. And um, so at the time, my wife doesn't fly. Um, and so we were always taking the train to New Jersey to visit and things like that. You take it through Chicago and out to the East Coast. And then I've had delays on Amtrak, but never a bad delay, an hour, maybe 2 hours. The one time when he's on his deathbed and I'm trying to get to see him before he dies, Amtrak had engine breakdown in Montana. So it goes from Seattle to um, Chicago. That first line that we have to take goes through Minneapolis. They're But they didn't have any engines out on the line in Montana. So they borrowed a freight engine, and freight engines are strong, but they're slower than passenger engines. And they're like, it's now an hour late. It's now 2 hours late. It just kept going. And it was 7 hours late. So we couldn't take our connection. So we stayed over in Chicago. And then we took the train the next day. We got out there within a couple days. We got to see him. I think he only sort of woke up out of his, like, he had like morphine or something for the pain. And he there, you wouldn't take the Empire Builder. That's the one. They have so many problems with the freight traffic and with, I think, the terrain and things like that, that they had they're the Empire Builder that goes out to Seattle and Portland and to Chicago has problems. Not all their lines have problems like that. So I think you would I think it would be a good trip. Yours would probably be a southern trip, and then up into Chicago from the south. And I think that would be a good trip. That's not something I've ever taken. Well, that sucks, Carolina. Um, yeah. I did eventually get out there. Like I said, he was in kind of a morphine stupor. So he actually would kind of wake up for a minute, groan, moan, yell, and then go back into sleep or into stupor. Um, and I'll never forget it. My mom had been there every single day, and so she kind of, and we, with hospice, you're not going anywhere. It's, at some point person's going to pass away. So we got there. So she made a hair appointment, I believe, and wanted to get out and take care of that. So it was Gopher Girl and I were just sitting there with him. But we got to be there with him, and it was just in time because that he died that day. So it was it was a little harrowing getting there, but to be able to get there and see him before he went, it was worth it, to get through all that and stuff. So but he did not have quality of life, and so it kind of was hard to see that happen, and it does make me nervous because of the family history and everything. But hopefully I stay healthy, and yeah. So talking about train trips, I know that Gopher Girl wants to get onto these Japanese trains because they're so clean and fancy, and she watches YouTube videos on them and everything. Um, and I kind of want to take some scenic ones. I know here in Minnesota we have some dinner trains. There's not really a long scenic journey. I know in Canada there is. Wouldn't mind trying that. I think it would be kind of neat. I've never been to Alaska, and everybody likes going to Alaska. And so I think it would be neat. They have one rail line in Alaska, and I think it would be really neat to travel there on the train. Um, and yeah, well, you need to be able to fly, Gopher Girl, if you want to get out to Japan to take those trains. So, no shrinkage yet. It'll take a while to dry, but yeah. So, but that's what I'm working on. I'll go to the hobby shop. Well, we have go for football, University of Minnesota football game early tomorrow, so I might actually go to the hobby shop later, which I don't usually do. Usually, I go when it first opens, walk around, hem and haw, look at the same things over and over again, and get a little tiny thing that's a little tiny, horn or some detail or some stirrups or something, while I'm sitting there looking over these $300 engines and things like that. But so I'll probably go a little later. It opens at 10. It takes about a half hour to get there, so I could do that and still come back and be a little late for the game, but we'll see. So non non non-cancer related, but talking about kids, one of my best friends has two kids with health problems. His daughter has a heart problem, and his son has stomach and intestine problems. And I don't know, they spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on care, and they into hospitals and stuff. And it's like a normal part of their life to go through that as these kids have gotten older. Um, and so I can't imagine what it's like going into children's hospitals all the time to deal with that. As a matter of fact, I believe that we're going to have a baby shower when one of the kids was born, and his wife ended up going into labor, and we had the baby shower in like the waiting room, the hospital. And that's the north-south train, right, Daryl? In That's the one with the waves on the side of the train, I believe. I don't think that hockey is date night or date time either, but we made it that way somehow. I think it had something to do with your influence, Gopher Girl. And so yeah, so I don't believe that football um, is daytime, mainly too because the football team's never been that good. They've been much better in recent years, but they weren't ever that like the hockey team. It was actually fun to go to hockey games and stuff. So we'll get to a hockey game or two this year. So yeah, and I listen to, what's the name of the podcast I listen to all the time? I hate when I blank on names. I get that from my mother. I blame her. But there is a podcast called The Roundhouse. You would know it by the guy's voice if you've listened to The Roundhouse. And it has a smattering of model railroading, a lot of heritage railroading and things like that. And he's always talking to these people that do these heritage railroads, these museums, they do these dinner trains and things. So he's got me all hyped up to do a dinner train type of thing, or go visit some museums and things like that when I, if I ever get a chance to do that. But if you haven't ever checked it out, or if you're not a podcast person, I would recommend it. Again, it's called The Roundhouse. There's tons of model railroad podcasts. There's one that's not really done anymore because the guy who did it died. Speaking of cancer, his name is Ryan Anderson. He did something called the Model Railcast Show. It's still out there, and I recommend anybody who has who likes podcasts and likes model railroading, or anybody who's new to model railroading, to check it out. The thing that drew me to him all those years ago was that he treated it, and I think at the beginning he didn't know, but he treated it like, here it is. This is what it's called, Ryan Anderson's Model Railcast Show. That's its logo. He treated it like he didn't know anything about model railroading. So anytime he had a guest on, he would implore them to explain things in a layman's term. And I thought that was fantastic. And it drew me in because I was newer to model railroading, all the way back in the old days when I had a BlackBerry. So that's always been my favorite podcast. There's tons of podcasts out there. Our own Twin Cities division puts one out, all the time, which has guests on, and it's a roundtable discussion. Mom, we should do that next time I'm out. We should look into doing that. Maybe unlike the hobby shop who decided to take vacation when I took vacation and came out there. Maybe we could do that at some point. But the Twin Cities division puts a podcast out called The Crossing Gate. Again, it's a bunch of a bunch of model railroaders, a lot of experienced model railroaders. They talk a lot about operations. They talk about what they're, how they change up their layouts, and how all kinds of different things that really kind of indoctrinate you into the hobby, even though they're more experienced. So that's a really neat one. And of course, I'm going to boast about that because that's our own NMRA division doing that. Yep, Daryl. He's our superintendent right now, but he also does the social media. So he does the stuff on TikTok, on YouTube, and he is the one who produces the Crossing Gate podcast. But that's Split Rock Tom, who said he was going to teach me how to build rail for the AP program. So I got to get with him on that. But yeah, he's an engineer, and a one-to-one engineer for UP. And the rest of the time he spends on model railroading, and he's got a fantastic layout with his split rack layout. Oh, you do, Carolina. So that's nice. That's nice of you to take that on and do that. Not something not something I can, that I find myself being able to do. And so I'm glad there are people out there that do run around in those ambulances. Gopher Girl's best friend and some of her family members were all paramedics for a time. I don't know if they still are, but they certainly were doing that, and they were doing that in an area that needed paramedics a lot. So. So where are you a paramedic? Are you in where are you currently serving people? I don't recall also as I'm thinking about it, I'm trying to find I dropped somewhere. I don't recall if I had mentioned it, but I have to build motive power. So what I'm starting to plan is the catenary maintenance vehicle. Fortunately, so I mocked up a first and a second try of there it is, the underbody to scratch build engine, and so the one on and I also 3D printed or did a couple of versions of the shell. And it's based on a Bachmann model. And this is obviously the wrong livery. This is the Boston's T, but there is a New Jersey Transit version. So I originally set out and I mocked up the a version of a 3D printed shell here. I've done several of these versions so far. So I started working on that. Now the Bachmann version has this. It's almost like this is HO scale, but it's almost like N scale engines where the whole thing is like the metal frame and weights and stuff. And the engine's on the inside in there. But I wanted to start to build out the shell that I'm going to use. I went basic, and it was just to try and make it fit in there the way it's supposed to fit. And obviously this is oversized. I went to a more realistic thing because I was trying to figure out where the wheels are going to come through, where the wheel sets are going to come through and everything. And then, where have a space for the engine in here, and use that as the fuel tank or whatever. So this is the first mock-ups that I've done for this engine. Again, a New Jersey Transit used these, and in my era, and so that's what I'm starting with. But I'll have to do, as part of the AP program, I'll have to scratch build an engine or two, and then super detail others. But I think you need to build 3 pieces of motive power. So anyway, so this is the start, and I use a program called Onshape. It's an online CAD program. It's housed online and everything. You can use it for free or you can pay for it. I use the free version, of course. Okay, so you live right on the line of North and South Carolina. So you're serving the communities around there. So yeah, Daryl, my I've learned that my favorite part of I wouldn't consider myself good at it yet, but my favorite part of model railroading is building. And so that's why I want to use the AP Master Model Railroader program to guide me in the direction I need to go to build. And uh, I had some success now with building a flat car, and merited with that and everything. And so that's only reinforced me. And of course, I have all these projects going on. But I mean, working on this, I'm trying to make this the car for my era and make it for New Jersey Transit. These were undecorated, mainly used for Amtrak. These are the Horizon cars from Walthers that I've used and worked on. And when I did the cab car, which is still unfinished, and then doing these cars as well. And now I'm at the point where almost all of the underbody was details were 3D printed for those cars, so those got done quickly. I made an attempt to build the underbody in 3D as a 3D print, but I still haven't yet refined that. So there. So these two underbodies went together really quickly because outside of there's some styrene tubing. The center sill is a styrene. I put those on originally a long time ago. These simulate wires in here. There are 4 really thin rods of styrene, and then this is brass wire from K&S. These trucks are 3D printed, not my design. Somebody else designed those. But these details in here are all 3D printed details based on the article and how to build them. And so that's what made these go together. These two go together really fast. So I did the cab car first, and then I had most of the parts printed. I had to do some additional design and everything. But once I had those designs, then I could print as many as I need and put together the cars pretty quickly here. So I got done with those. So the next piece was working on these. So you can see, I got these ready. And then I was starting to go ahead on this one and start to make the holes and stuff to get moving on getting that center door. Certainly there are all kinds of grab irons and other details. Even for these cars, I will drill out the marker lights and then put some lighting in there. And those I'll do. What I'm doing on this one, on the private car, is I'm going to use some brass tubing to be the pickup and have the wires go through for lighting, so I won't have to rely on, it'll be track powered. I won't have to rely on a decoder in these. Like I have a decoder in the cab car, but for these, I won't have to rely on that. Yep. Carolina, analysis paralysis was my thing. And that's where I got the idea of just jump in. It took me years of going to the hobby shop, and all I'd ever come out with would be like a magazine. I'd look at all the other stuff, not know what I'm doing with any of that. So I go and I'd look at the magazines and I'd pick a magazine and maybe I'd come out with a magazine. I had this analysis paralysis. So one day I got so mad at myself, I said, I'm just going to take this bag of Woodland Scenics ground foam and I'm going to cut the corner of it and drop it on. I'm going to throw some glue down and then drop it on. And I did that. And from that day, I was able to get through that analysis paralysis. Now, it's not so much analysis paralysis, but you see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 projects on the table that at least we've talked about tonight, and the cab car is 5. So it's trying to move myself forward and working on these and getting things done. So I don't have that analysis paralysis as much anymore, but it's keeping on track with these projects and keep moving. And that's the reason I also that I do this live stream, is that I can share how I'm doing. I can hopefully inspire others to say, hey, this isn't as big as, it isn't as daunting as one might think, and hoping that I have progress so that people are entertained and get some inspiration from it. This is show 61, and I've got a steady stream of people who check the streams out, or come in and hang out, put it on in the background and work on their own layouts or their own projects and everything. And that's fantastic. And it keeps me going, doing stuff. And sometimes I don't have a lot of work that I've done. Sometimes I've done a lot of work and it's a little more exciting and stuff, but that's why I do it. I do it selfishly a little bit, and then I also do it to hopefully inspire others to do stuff, to just jump in and do that. And so with that inspirational end, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night there, because I do have a busy day tomorrow, and say again, just jump in and try it, and try anything, and you may find something you really enjoy. And I really appreciate everybody coming out and saying hi and sharing what they're doing, and inspiring others with what they're doing. And hope everybody has a fantastic weekend.